All right. Welcome back to But We're Different, everyone. For those of you joining us for the very first time, But We're Different Live is a weekly virtual event for revenue professionals who want to think differently about how to grow your business. We here at Impact have a team of coaches and trainers that are at any given time working with about 75 companies, helping them close the trust gap and achieve what we call sales and marketing mastery. Now, everything we share with you during these sessions is what we see firsthand from the companies that we work with. Now, here is what we know. The way people buy has changed, and yet most companies still have not changed the way they market and sell. So it is our mission here to take the insights we've learned and help you adapt to these changes so that you can grow your business. Our promise to you is this. You will always leave here with actionable takeaways that you can do immediately in your organization to improve your current growth strategies. So thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today. We know you can do anything with this hour and you chose to spend it with us. So with that, Zach, let's get into it.
I'm really excited about today's episode, and I'm hoping you are as well. You know, since we started this podcast, and our goal is to deal with this but we're different mindset and how companies can break through from it. We've given you a lot of different ways and principles that you can think of and how you do that. We've given you types of content that you can create. We've given you ways to integrate that stuff into the sales process. And, you know, we're speaking in very broad terms and very high level. Today, y'all are getting a very special treat to hear from a company that has, in many ways, broken free of this mindset and how that has directly impacted their bottom line. It's really incredible that we get the opportunity to hear from Chris Brant today. I love this gentleman. You're going to love him as well. It's an inspiration to hear from people who are actually applying this stuff in their business and how it's ultimately affecting their end users. So without further ado, Chris Brant, thank you for joining us today. If you could just quickly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about EW Motion Therapy so that we can get off to a good start here.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. So my name is Chris Brant. I'm a physical therapist by trade, but I've become the marketing director of EW Motion Therapy. I've been in this position for a little over, I guess, about 3 years now. We are a Birmingham, Alabama-based physical therapy practice, but we also offer a lot of other wellness products, personal training, yoga, Pilates. Probably too many products, honestly, but Impact's helped us a lot with that. Since we started with Impact, we've opened 2 more locations, so we're at 6 total now. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, one of the things I was really excited about having you on today, Chris, is that if there is any type of organization that could easily say, yeah, but we're different, this doesn't apply to us, it really is y'all. I mean, there's so many different things that are unique about the way you deliver your service, the way you bring in customers, even the way that you receive payment for the services that you do. They are different from so many other types of organizations. But that's what makes this a really great case study and why it's so powerful, breaking free from that mindset. So I don't want to talk too much, Chris, specifically about like exactly what you did going through our coaching program. I more just want to focus on y'all and what happened internally there. And so, you know, I'm thinking about when you'd first come to us a couple of years ago and where you were at. Can you share with everybody kind of what was the genesis of realizing that you needed a different approach within your marketing and what eventually led you to They Ask You Answer?
Yeah. So, I guess it was about a little over 2 years ago. We had, I don't know if y'all know, but most of the time in the physical therapy world, all of our customers come to us through doctors or through MDs. So it's a very strong referral process that we have to go to. We don't have any investors that are MDs like some physical therapy practices have. So we don't have any guaranteed sources of customers. All of our previous marketing practices were pretty much kind of grassroots. We had a couple ladies that would just drive around. We'd do lunches or breakfasts. We'd drop off sticky note pads and pens. And that's what we had done pretty much for the entire business's career. We really grew because of word of mouth. but we knew we wanted to grow, and being able to scale by word of mouth is just it's not easy to do. So we realized that we needed to change. I took up this position as our director of marketing, thinking that we just needed a physical therapist there to teach the doctors we were already seeing about what we do so they could send more patients. And that was going good for, I don't know, maybe 2 months until our CEO was handed They Ask You Answer at a business vistage meeting by just a guy in the crowd who, he had read it and just said, you need to read this, and I think you'll like it. And so after he did that, I was handed the book and told to read it, thinking, oh, this is just some good ideas for us to implement, not knowing that we had a meeting with Impact about 3 weeks later with their sales team. And so that grew, and that's really how we got going down this path.
Yeah. So you, Chris, not being a marketer by trade, were basically tapped to become the marketing director within this initiative. What was your initial kind of feeling or response with that?
I was very uncomfortable with literally every single thing that we had talked about, especially a lot of principles in the book that I never thought we'd be able to do. My education, everything that I do as a PT is always it's one-on-one, it's who I'm in front of, trying to help that person through some things, but never thinking using that in a large scale. So a lot of the principles were not first nature to me, nor was anything about a website or a learning center or content or blogs or anything like that. So
yeah. Do you feel like that gave you any particular advantage actually by not having formal marketing training in the past? Now you've read this book. Do you feel like that was actually an advantage in any way?
I do. I Going into this, I already knew the questions that people were asking and the answers that we needed. And it was something we already did, just it was so small, just the customers that we already had that, that I think that's really what kind of leveraged me in a good position to be able to scale what we were trying to do. So I knew the content, I knew the questions, I knew what needed to be answered, but just didn't know, what it could be used for.
Yeah. It's huge strength because, for so many that are marketers by trade or content producers by trade, they're not working that close to the end customer and not familiar with those fears and worries and anxieties that people have when they get ready to spend money, but you were up close and personal to it. So, obviously one of the first things that we recommended to you and the first things you started to get to work on is staffing up the team and getting the right people in place, content writer, videographer, building a team that could actually pull this off. So what were some of the early challenges you feel like you ran into there, or even where the "but we're different" mindset even started to kick in there?
That's a great question. So the first, I don't know, scab to pull off or whatever you want to call it, was hiring a content writer, a content manager. It was hard to as a PT company, you don't really want to hire people that aren't producers, because it's hard to prove that they have any income if they're not directly billing services. So it's really hard for doctors to hire support staff that's not a nurse that can bill, right? So that's the mindset we've always had as a healthcare company, firsthand. And so realizing that if we hire this person, the amount that they have to generate in revenue, if you start breaking it down, it's a lot. And so you really have to go all in. And so we just decided one day that we were going to 100% do this. It was the only way we were going to grow and scale, was to spread our message. And so we finally hired someone who we felt was going to be able to handle that, kind of a younger girl who didn't know anything about the PT world, but just knew how to write. And so me and her as a team really got on the same page. And so she may know more about PT now in the last 2 years of riding than some of my PTs do. So that was the first big challenge. The second big challenge was obviously the videographer. And she's so talented that sometimes it's still a challenge because she's wanted to do so many different things that I have to tell people no, that she just needs to be filming and editing. And so we actually kind of moved her role. She was our IT director, kind of in charge of all of our systems, and just realized that for her to become a just super productive part of what we were trying to do, that she needed to be our videographer and she needed to be a part of this growth in our marketing department. So those two pieces, from a financial standpoint, were probably the toughest to get over starting out.
Chris, I'm assuming you remember the conversations pretty clearly of, do we need a content manager? And I'm sure a lot of people in this room are curious. What was the real reason that allowed your company to take the leap and go hire a full-time content manager in a healthcare company?
I mean, I think there was I don't want to say an ultimatum, but we had already started working with Zach, and he basically said, you have to hire this person. Y'all can't do it yourselves, and this is the only way you're going to get your information out. And so we started thinking that, do we just take one of our PTs and have them start writing? We went down every single avenue you could. It's like, do we just start writing articles? And I think there was just a tipping point. It was like, either we do it all or we don't do this at all, because we're not going to just, go half in on this investment that we're trying to make into the company. And so for us as a leadership team, that was, once we got to that point, we just knew what we were going to do. Then getting other directors on board was a little bit more difficult, because that's probably the hardest, is the people that aren't going to see immediate revenue from something. Thinking into the future can be sometimes difficult. And then knowing how to, all we hire is PTs and front desk staff. How to hire a content manager was the next really difficult part, which Impact helped a lot with that, but it all worked out.
So Chris, there's like a hurdle that I'm seeing, or that I feel like a lot of people will hit, that you cleared, which is like, being in healthcare, you're faced with a lot of different challenges. So the one that sticks out to me is your service costs a different amount for every single person, I would imagine, who gets it. Just like, what does my insurance company cover? What doesn't it? And then on the publishing side of content, you have like HIPAA stuff if you're implementing CRM and marketing automation. So like, there's a bunch of reasons for your team to look at this and be like, this isn't going to work for us. Like the classic, right? Like, we're different. This doesn't apply to us because insurance and this and that and HIPAA, amongst a million other things. So like, talk me through a little bit how you guys cleared that, because I think that's something that a lot of people face.
Sure. So the first probably uncomfortable things to write about are cost in our, you can't really go to any provider website unless it's some sort of concierge medicine, or kind of a private pay type situation, and find actual costs of things. What we realized, and what was difficult for us to realize, is like, we can't write about costs. We don't know what anything costs. And then I think I had a rebuttal one day. It was like, we do know what things cost because we actually charge people every day. How do we not know what it costs if we're like taking money from people? And so I think when we got out of thinking of this very specific, we have to be very specific with what people need to know in order to pay us. We started to broaden that scope a little bit, and just just give them a range. Like, just let them know that if they've met these qualifications, that they may pay between $20 and $60. And then we've expanded that into really trying to teach people what their insurance is, what deductibles are, and what all the terminology goes along with your insurance, and then giving you the resources to find out what your specific costs could be. And I've dove down the rabbit hole of building out a cost calculator, and that's going to take me a while as far as insurance goes, but that was really the first hard thing for us to get over, is understanding we can tell people what it costs to come and see us, even with their insurance. So, and that's to this day been our most popular Learning Center articles, and we get traffic on there from all over the place. The second hard part was the best of stuff. So for legal reasons, and just like most law firms, most healthcare places can't say that they're better than anyone down the street, but you can phrase it in a way that makes it legal. So all of ours is best reviewed by Google. We give exactly what the people want to know in our area. In fact, we just updated our 2022 article to 2023. We get a lot of traffic on that, and I can say in the last quarter, we had 10 customers just come in off that one article. So, you can get around those things if you're just open to trying, to make it applicable to your situation.
When you think about some of that big five content that you've done, Chris, so you said anything where you're talking about cost and price, and where we're able to talk about best of, are there any others within the big five that you've noticed are like big customer generators, maybe even your biggest piece of content that have performed well?
Our pricing guide is still our biggest piece of content. Trying to think. No, those are really our two best. I think we've had some Pilates articles that have really taken off as far as best of or best Pilates places in certain parts of town, but cost is by far our most trafficked and biggest generator of revenue to this point. So
yeah, it's the reason I bring it up is that, for so many companies that catch the vision of, they ask you answer and they go, we want to be the teacher, we want to answer questions. They do sometimes default to the thing that they just know really well and are already teaching. And so for y'all, it would have been very easy. You can talk about, things people can do to increase their mobility or their flexibility. And like, you can give those pro tips, and that's the stuff you're used to teaching about. But it's when you shifted your focus from, no, we need to be talking about this buying decision that somebody is making. That's the stuff that actually brought the customers. And that's thinking different. Too many companies, they don't think that way. They just want to be, thought leaders or subject matter experts. So I commend you guys for that. With the types of content that you've produced, so now at this point, you've produced a ton of videos, ton of written content. There was another component of this that you ran into with how to get that content out there. So it's ranking on search engines, it's bringing people to the website. But of course, we knew assignment selling had to come into play at some point. But explain to us why that was difficult for y'all, and it's a little bit untraditional for maybe some other folks in different types of businesses.
Right. So we kind of have, I would say, almost two different avenues of customers. So we have the people who are interacting with our front desk, and then our front desk, I would say, trying to make a sale per se, but a lot of times we're not cold calling or doing anything, those usual sales techniques. A lot of time it's either someone coming in through the website who's requesting an appointment. And our call to action on our website is to request an appointment. So a lot of times it's that end of that buying decision. Sometimes people have already made that buying decision, so there's not a whole lot to sell from our front desk. And then it's the interaction from our PTs, or who I would consider our best salespeople are our PTs. Sometimes they just don't know that, to the customer when they have them in front of them. And so our first big hurdle was getting our front desk out of this mindset of just collecting paperwork, collecting insurance cards, collecting driver's license. Well, let's schedule you out some appointments 2 times a week for the next 6 weeks. If anyone's been to PT, everyone's heard that. And getting them into this idea that, people ask them questions all the time. They ask, what do I need to wear when they come to physical therapy? What do I need to bring with me? How long is this going to take, to work? And they ask, I would say previously we would call them, not necessarily qualified to answer a lot of the questions they get, but now they have the content to be able to send to people and get them to follow up and really make that sometimes first visit feel like it is the best visit they could get, because that's really where we capture our best customer. And so that was a rough point in getting them to understand what we have, getting them to understand that they can use that to make their life, not only their lives easier, but the customers' lives better and their first visit much easier. So we've standardized that to a point so that it makes onboarding and getting people comfortable with assignment selling very easy. We have our 3 keys to success. We send out a bio video for every PT. That's who you're going to see on the first visit. We send out our frequently asked questions video. Everybody pretty much gets that, depending on what program you're in. And then we also take the time, and I try to get my PTs to send out individual video before their visit, just kind of depending on questions that the person may have asked the front desk, or anything else that they might be curious about. If we know we're seeing them for their low back, we already have some videos teed up ready to send them before they even come in. So that's kind of our front end assignment selling. The second part is getting my PTs to understand what the content is and getting them to use, everything we have when they're face to face, instead of just thinking that customer is sold when they are face to face. We want all of our customers to become lifelong clients. And the best way to do that is to teach them everything they need to know. So that's kind of how we try to do assignment selling on the back end there.
Chris, can you talk a little bit about how your company has accomplished the glass ceilings you had to break for your PTs to start doing some of this consistently? Like, how did you guys answer the what's in it for me at the PT level? And what was the journey that looked like to get people actually doing some of this stuff consistently?
That's a great question. So really it took a while, I would say. And it may be even still a struggle today in some aspects, but really what we had to show first was that people, really I had to show that people were coming in to our website and we were actually getting customers from the content and from a lot of the questions that the PTs had actually gathered for me, them thinking we weren't doing anything with them. So once they understood that their knowledge and that their questions were actually getting people into the clinic, a lot of them began to understand that, oh, wait, I can just give this person an article about hydration and then how much personal training is going to cost. And that's going to keep them coming back and I don't have to do anything else. So that took a while. And a lot of practitioners like to get back in their bubble. So it takes a lot of follow-up and a lot of training, continued training to make sure that that's continuing to happen.
Yes. Can you break that down just a little bit, Chris? Like, how did you show your PTs what was happening on the website? Was this a meeting? Is this an email update?
So I started out with, and I can't do it as much now because we have so much content, but with the PTs, or at least, I would call them salespeople in most instances, but my bigger producers and the ones who wanted to do the articles up front, once I showed them, hey, this person literally came to the website from this article, and now they're a customer and they're going to XYZ clinic and they've come 6 times, and if they've come this many times, this is how much revenue that you've generated off that one article. Then it's kind of a trickle down effect. Once I got them on board and bought in, then they were able to kind of do it for me. So now I have a lot of people that kind of promote a lot of our stuff for me, which is very helpful and has to happen in order for us to grow this. So it was one-on-one to begin with, and now we've turned it into, I do a monthly marketing newsletter that's really a they ask you answer newsletter. I just call it a marketing newsletter because that's the term that everybody likes, where I give updates on number of appointment requests we've got, articles that are the hottest, videos that are the best, how many YouTube subscribers we have, and kind of give the paths that people have made it into the clinic. So
What are those reports looking like these days, Chris? Like, what was the last one? Give us a sense for the results that you're seeing now at this point.
Yeah. So last quarter we generated close to 85 customers, which resulted in about $45,000 worth of revenue just from the website. And that's coming from, before we started with Impact, we were getting maybe 5 to 10 appointment requests and maybe 1 to 2 customers every month from the website. And some of those were people just being referred to us and just using it, but that's actually organic traffic turned into customers from there. So
It's incredible. Nick?
Yeah, I'm curious about the second and third order effects of what you're doing. So like there's the part where you train the desk and the PTs to do the assignment selling, like like the motions, just like going through the behaviors. But like as someone who's gone through PT, if I had that experience, there's a level of delight there and like comfort that makes me it makes me proud of the choice that I made to pick the practice I picked. So I'm curious, like, what the average number of visits are from someone who signed up with you a year or two ago. I'm curious how that's changed, if it has changed today.
So we actually, I have a number, just for the people who've come in through the website. So when we started this, I think we were averaging per website user. It was low. I mean, I would say it was 2 to 3 visits per person that entered through the website. And now we're averaging 6 to 8 visits per person that's coming through the website. And we can only track it over a certain amount of time. I don't know how many of those people have actually turned in, to come in for a whole year at this point. But so it's been great in as far as the follow-up and the people that want to come in, and then we have so many more people since we do have a lot of products. Obviously our biggest entrance is through physical therapy, but we do have a lot of people that go into different products now. So we offer nutrition counseling, we offer Pilates, personal training, yoga, we have a golf program, a gymnastics program. And so we see a lot more people coming in through PT, but then moving into other products and becoming kind of that lifelong client that we want. So the usage across the board is grown, which has been just great to see.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where my head was going was more on like the lifetime value of a customer. So I know, like, having gone through PT, after 4 or 5 visits, you start losing steam, like, as a customer to come back. And I would imagine that like the level of delight and the level of involvement that you guys have in educating buyers and making it easy for them to pick you, has there been an increase in total number of either just total lifetime value? It sounds like it's what you're saying is like they can be introduced to new products. They are more likely to finish the program. Things like that, I think, are kind of interesting, like a third order effect of doing this type of work.
Yeah. So I would say, I mean, we were pretty good at keeping the people in front of us in our system before we started with Impact. That's the word of mouth. That's really what we did. But we've actually, as far as lifetime goes, expanding into, we now have 2 more clinics since we've started. We've been able to see a lot more people and retain a lot more people than we ever would have before. So I would say the growth has been a lot, that second and third order more than the first order, but I think that's just from, we do, our product is probably a little bit more of an engaged product. We do a lot of 1-to-1. And so it kind of fit right in with what we were already doing. And now we've just been able to grow and scale from there. Not so much from that one, that personal interaction growing across a number of visits.
It's awesome. There's an element to this that we haven't talked much about on this show, but it's like doing these basics over a long period of time. Like you cited a whole bunch of different things. It's like, all right, well, look, we're addressing the things that buyers care about and the way that they want to understand this stuff. On our website, we are making it easy for them to purchase, and we're giving them this education so that their first visits, like they off to a very good start with us. It's not clumsy, like all of these things. These are a lot of really basic things. And it's like, you guys execute them really well every day over a long period of time. And like, that's really where the magic is. It's not some flashy, sexy marketing tactic that's like the trendy thing. It's just like, hey, we're going to do this thing really well forever. And it's what works.
To that point, Chris, I was just going to ask, is there any like unexpected benefits or realizations that have come from you guys doing they ask you answer in your company, either just through internal communication or what onboarding looks like for your team, like anything that is just unexpected benefit through the practice of doing this well?
I would say it's probably been more internal with people who probably felt like they were by the wayside, or employees, PTs who felt like all they did was come to work. They saw their 8 to 10 patients a day and then they went home, feeling a lot more involved, being able to get them in front of a camera, being able to get them to teach. You have different personalities come out. We've had people who I never thought would take up a leadership position start to realize that they're really good at teaching people what they do and what they're passionate about. We've developed an entire golf program off of that, off 2 guys who I didn't think would ever do anything but come in and treat, never realized their passion was golf. You get them talking. They want to teach people about what PTs can do for golfers, which is not something that you hear about a whole lot. It's more about swing coaches. And now, they've built an entire program, and by the end of next year, we want them only seeing golfers. And I think that's a real possibility. So we've seen just an amazing turn of some personalities who you wouldn't think, would come out of their shell. Being able to produce this stuff and being a part of this has really, really been cool.
Ah, dang, man. All right. This is a hard thing for us to talk about or like sell in the process of doing the ask you answer. But one of my favorite questions to ask companies that have been doing it for a while is, outside of sales and marketing growth, like, how else has your company gotten better through the practice of doing this work in the last 2 years? And I never don't get an answer like that. Like, I just think it's cool that it's like a cultural improvement in the organization. Is that fair to say, Chris?
Oh, it's huge. So, and Zach and I have talked about this before. So when we started this and really got into it, we ended up changing almost our whole company structure. So we changed our mission statement. We now have put trusted source in our mission statement. We started using Culture Index and kind of using that as part of our career. And then we're going to get more into the content for career, but we started using that. We've come up with 26 fundamentals of our business, which is all about teaching to team first to everything like that. And we have a fundamental of the week that we do before every single meeting that we have. And that's all based around this and that kind of internal communication and that internal teaching we want to do. So it fundamentally changed our structure down to how our meetings are being held. Which has been very cool. And then it's only going to grow. We're really trying to get into the career space with our content and a career page, and how we recruit is our next big foray into this. And we really want it to be the same results that we've gotten with everything else.
I think it's a testament to your willingness to challenge the status quo in your industry and the conventional stereotypes that have been held onto in that space, Chris. I mean, from basic things like just changing the messaging on your homepage, right? So we're not just physical therapists here. We're helping you become the warrior like you were meant to be, right? Helping you get back to the things that you love, just positioning that customer as the hero. What's interesting too is this really, I remember, Chris, this all started with a bit of a paradigm shift too in who you were actually going to be talking to with your marketing and with all this teaching that you had, because before it's all referrals from other medical professionals, right? People need a referral for a lot of these services. And so that's who you were appealing to before. Then there was this shift that's like, no, this is really a B2B to C model, meaning that if we can drive demand amongst the people who actually come in for these services, they'll go to the doctor and say, I want to go with those folks, like refer me to them. And so I'm curious too, how has that, for lack of a better term, middleman been affected by this? Like, so how are those doctors' offices, how have they responded to the content? And are there folks that have been using that to help refer people to you, or what have you seen in that respect?
So I would say that we've seen a giant increase in kind of the self-referral, if you will. So the person who's figured out where they want to go, kind of like you said, and tells their doctor or gets in contact with us to help them figure out how they get in. We've seen a big jump in that. And so we have a lot of content in the state of Alabama. It varies by state, but you can come to PT without a referral, but you have to pay with cash. If you get a referral, you can use your insurance. So people don't quite understand that. And so really educating people, you can come to PT, you can come see us, but if you want to use your insurance, we need a referral. Well, I don't know how to get a referral. And so we've taken that, and we've actually had a really good response from doctors. I thought that some of them would be kind of mad because they had people coming in and almost going over their heads in a sense. But the feedback we've had is great. We actually did a video this past Friday with a surgeon who wanted to teach, and he's going to go on one of our articles, and we're going to have several more lined up. We're going to start doing interviews with doctors to do articles that go into our learning center to teach people. So it's actually gone the other direction, and that we have, we actually have patients teaching their doctors about where they want to go and why they want to go there, versus us trying to go beg doctors to send people to us. So it's been a very good shift.
It's now that you've done it, it almost seems obvious, right? But most people don't think this way. It's like when we can paint the picture of what this looks like. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense that would happen. And there's a principle in here too, Chris, which I think is important for everybody that's listening, is that, in the way that it typically might work. Okay. A doctor tells you, hey, here's some companies to go look through, right? And they're telling you, go talk to these people, versus when there's a self-discovery on the side of that patient that says, I've investigated this, I've walked through the logic, I'm choosing this. I imagine that affects the quality of the conversation you have with them. So we talked a little bit about more leads that are coming in through the website and more referrals and things like that. What have you noticed about the just the readiness of these folks to get started? Like, has there been anything measurable, or just even any examples of them being more equipped or more ready to get started?
Oh, absolutely. So from just a website perspective, we can start there. We've gotten very specific in some of our programs due to kind of what we talked about with our golfers that really have had a passion about that. And we have probably our most popular with, the young females is gymnastics. And so there's so many injuries in gymnastics, and people are obsessed with gymnastics, and it's a year-round sport, and girls get beat up. And so they're very, very passionate about that sport. And one of our PTs that does that realized that there's a need for that. And we've had people call us to try and figure out how to get in. And we've had one lady that I talked to last week, she couldn't figure out how to get in. She told me who her pediatrician was, and I ended up just calling the pediatrician and telling them what we do and that they need to come see us. And I got all that worked out, but they drove an hour and a half, and they're doing that once a week to come see our gymnastics. Not that they can go see a PT that's 10 minutes down the road and doing anything different than what Kayla, who does it, is doing. It's just that they were so ready to buy the product that we had that they're now bought in, and they're just going to keep coming back at least once a week. And they're driving an hour and a half every single time just to get to us. And so we have a few stories like that where people have found us and are making that drive, or people have called us just not understanding, and then we've tried to make that sell for them. So that's been very, very cool to see. On the other side, and kind of goes along with this assignment selling, our front desks have just been so relieved to not have to do quite as much on the front end with our assignment selling people. When they come in for their first appointment, most of the time are prepared. They aren't standing up there asking how much they're going to pay. They don't know what they have to wear or bring in. People are ready to come in. They know how much they have to schedule before they even step foot in the door. And it has made our front desk lives so much easier, and probably the patients too. But that angle of it has been very beneficial as well.
Yeah. Well, they trust you, right? What's interesting is when we talk with folks and we're combating this but we're different mindset, trying to get them over for their own sake, we're always going to come back to that. Well, do you believe you're in the business of trust? Do you want to be the most trusted? That's the kind of conversation that we're having. That's the thing that unites us together as businesses. We kind of breezed over a little bit earlier, but y'all went as far as to change the mission statement of the entire company, that you wanted to be that trusted, advisor, that trusted source of information. I also remember, Chris, having a conversation with Ethan, who's of course one of the founders and great guy, Ethan White. And we talked about his personal role within this. And this is important for everybody to know. Just, in order for something like this to happen in EW motion therapy, there's a certain level of involvement from leadership that has to be present. These things all just happen. These things just fall into place on their own. And there was this self-discovery that he had, which is, I need to cast the vision here. I need to be really involved with us becoming that trusted voice, and I need to talk about it a whole lot. And that is obviously a major component of this. Chris, do you have any examples or things where you notice this like obsession with trust has really shown up with the mission statement, with your leadership, with anything else?
Yeah. So I'd say that I remember that conversation because I think a lot of times people, they either get with Impact or read, they ask you answer, do something along those lines. And they're like, oh, this is for our marketing department to do. Here's our marketing director, and he just has to do that. And so, I remembered when we dealt with Ethan and his, thinking that he was going to have no involvement in it. He's fundamentally changed how he's leading the company now. So he does every single story brand meeting we have. I've made him in charge of that. He's involved in every program. When we need things like that. And so he's very much involved with They Ask You Answer from a program perspective. I'm sorry, Zach, I kind of went off on Ethan. You got me on him. What was the other parts of the question?
Well, just becoming obsessed with trust. It's a lot of people say we want to be trusted. We believe we're in the business of trust, but very few actually do the things that it takes. So, are there any other examples you can think of that show just how serious that obsession was with trust?
Sure. So I think as a company, we were very good at getting people to trust us when they were in front of us. And that's everything that we wanted to do. That was our whole business model. But how do you get more people in front of you if that's all you're trying to do? And so we had to shift everyone's focus from, I'm only going to trust you because you're in front of me, you're my PT, and my doctor told me to trust you, to you need to be that guide for that person, and they need to trust you as much as they trust their doctor, if not more. They have to trust you because of your knowledge and your expertise in what you're doing, and not because they're there and you just, you're the person because they think you're the person. And so I think that's been very good, especially with onboarding our new PTs and our new people, is getting them to understand, listen, you just did all this school. You're a very smart person. You need to teach people and get them to trust you off the bat. And that's how you generate the kind of that lifelong client. And so using trust is kind of the foundation for everything we teach with our new PTs. And then as we do follow-up training, has been, monumental.
There's an unconventional aspect of the way that you guys are doing this. And Zach kind of alluded to this before, which is like, you could have made content like, here's how to stretch your back. This is why, your feet hurt or something like that. And you guys took this totally unconventional approach, right? Which is explain to people how to make a smart purchasing decision when you're considering physical therapy and all the things that surround it. Was there anything going on? Did you get any pushback from people when you were like, hey, we're going to take this approach? And are people looking at you going, we should really be teaching people how to stretch and teaching people how to move properly so that this doesn't happen or whatever? Was there any conflict there?
So probably the biggest conflict I got from people was some of our comparison stuff, comparing PTs to massage therapists, comparing PTs to PTAs, comparing what else did we do that people hated? Personal trainers to athletic trainers is one we actually just did, that I actually had some athletic trainers that work for us in different departments were like, whoa, we can't publish that. And I was like, no, if you type it into Google, there's like 1.5 billion search results that people want to know what this is. Just because you think you know it, and you think, well, everybody else must know it. If I know it, that doesn't mean take it to be true. So the pushback really came a lot from people not understanding the questions that our customers were actually asking, to make that buying decision, because a lot of times the people are just in front of you when you're getting those questions answered. So I think once we showed that people are asking these questions and we just need to have answers for them, that was a big change, a big change in people's minds. I think one of our biggest performing YouTube videos is PTs versus OTs, and it's gotten I've had several OT students comment negative things on it, although we preface it in the video. It's just a small insight into it, but you can see that people are curious about it and they want to know, and you have to answer those questions, even if you may ruffle some feathers along the way. You can't be scared to do that, because that one's gotten the most negative comments on it, but it's also done the best out of all of our videos. So
It's funny how that works.
Cool. Well, Chris, I want to pull out a couple of key points that have got my head nodding today. And then I'm going to end it with asking you the question that I think a lot of people are sitting here wondering, which is, if you've been living in the past, talking about the conversation, based on everything you shared today, why do you think your company has been successful doing They Ask You Answer? And a couple points that I'm thinking about just to get the ball rolling. Your leadership team is massively bought in for this to work. You also didn't allow it failing at the beginning to be the reason why we stopped when we had like the minimum viable product at the beginning of things. And then third is, you guys apparently realize you're never going to be able to take your foot off the gas of your PTs and the rest of your company being fully bought into being effective at this work. Like, you're constantly getting them back into the swing of seeing the value in this, hearing the why, hearing the what's in it for me. Outside of those things, like, why do you guys think you are where you are right now? Why are you successful?
Gosh, you kind of hammered all the good ones.
Well, dig into the good stuff. I don't want to steal the gold.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I think we have been so good at it because we hear the feedback from the patients, from our customers, from our clients, that what we've done has really changed their life. What we're done and what we've put out, what we've been able to show them has really been, amazing to a lot of people, and what they're dealing with in their lives, and just being totally transparent in everything that we do. We've probably had more comments about how we list cost of everything on our website. We're not scared to talk about it anymore. Everybody knows what everything costs all the time. Has been such a nice thing for people that again, back to the trust that Zach kind of talked about. Once you hear that from one patient or client, that they trust you because of the things that you list, the things you tell them, and that they're going to come back and see you for the rest of their lives. They're going to send your dad to you. They're going to send your kids to you. They're going to continue to buy whatever you tell them to do, because they now trust you. If you have that done one time, I think you kind of bought in. And so that helped a lot of my PTs that were struggling. I get to hear those stories all the time, which is how I'm bought in. So if you can keep that kind of that testimonial, that journey, that story going of the people that you've helped or taught or whatever it is that you're trying to sell, I think that is the best. You have to have that journey, that follow up, and to be able to actually show we changed this person's life is just, the best way for people to stay bought in, and has changed, our company as we've talked about. So,
yeah. And to the point I was making earlier, like, you can't just check that box and be done with it. That's not one meeting. That's not one email update. This is something that you do 1,000 little ways. It's funny, like, people pick up the book They Ask You Answer. It's one of the simplest books out there. And some people take it as like, this is some awesome marketing tactics. I'm going to go hand this to my director of marketing, and then they're just going to keep it in mind. And on the other side, where y'all live, this is going to become the culture of how our company operates forever. We're going to find a way for this to become the backbone of our belief system. We're going to put it on the flipping wall, and it's going to be the mission statement. We're going to have it be a part of the conversation in anything that we're doing. If we're talking about careers, if we're talking about making relationships with referral partners, if we're educating our end users, if we're doing the ask and answer for like answering internal conversations or questions that our employees are asking, like it's crazy how someone can read that book and get the marketing tactics side and get the culture and company changing side. And we know where the case studies live on that spectrum.
So we've got a question here for you too, Chris, from one of our viewers. Did you ever end up incorporating some of that more conventional how to ease your back pain type of content down the line, or would doing so have been unhelpful?
So I think we realized that in order for us to have that kind of total continuum of teaching, we had to, especially if you think about that buyer's journey and making people aware of their problems, we absolutely have to have that content. We have a lot of it, and that's only growing. And so for people to start their journey with us, a lot of times it's, why does my back hurt? Well, how do I fix that? Do I need a PT or a chiropractor, or do I need to go to an orthopedist, or am I going to die? Down to, well, then where do I go? And so a lot of people don't know, if my back hurts, how they even end up at PT. And so taking them on that journey through our content, my content manager has been fantastic about, different types of CTAs, if we want to get specific into that, and if this is here and your back hurts, well, you may need a PT or you need a chiropractor. It's not necessarily you need us yet. They're probably not ready to come buy from us. So, hey, here's that article and you need to go read this, and then you make that decision. And so we have to have that problem aware content in order for people to get to us. And that's the easiest content for us to develop. The hard stuff is down the line. We don't, typically like to sell ourselves as being the best, but that's where that teaching comes in. And why do you need us? Not every person is going to be our best client. And why is that? And we need to let you know that. So that's been a big part of how we've taken people through that buyer's journey. So we absolutely have that type of content as well.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I really appreciate you being here with us today and being able to talk about your journey. We're obviously tremendously proud of all the work that you've done, and y'all did the work. And in fact, if anybody's listening to this or watching this, I'd encourage you to go to ewmotiontherapy.com. That's the right domain, correct, Chris? And find inspiration in it. From very basic things like looking at some of their self-selection tools, right? You could determine what program is right for you on the website. Traditionally, that's something that other companies be hoping you just come in and talk to them, and then they'll give you an answer. These are one of the very many ways that EW Motion Therapy is thinking different. And Chris, we like to end these with a way that this audience can think different rather than saying, "But we're different." Chris, if I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit, if you were to give everybody some advice on how to think different, if they want to achieve similar results as EW Motion Therapy and yourself have achieved, what would be your advice?
Yeah, I would say you need to think of the question that you're the most uncomfortable about talking about with your client or with whoever you're trying to make a sale to. And then you need to answer that and put it out there for people to read. It's got to make you cringe on the inside. You can't find another PT clinic that lists any prices of anything on their website. I've looked for it and you can't find it. And that made us so uncomfortable to put out there. And now we talk about it on a daily basis, and it's just part of our culture. So that's really what you got to do, is inwardly reflect on what just makes you like stop talking, and then you got to write about it.
I love that, man. That's hilarious. And I think that's the most sound advice I've ever heard on getting started. So Chris, thanks again for hanging with us today. And thank you everyone for joining us today. As always, you can catch the replays of these sessions. We guest on a ton of other great shows. We have a ton of exclusives from the team here at Impact on the But We're Different podcast feed. So if you haven't already, subscribe today. We will be back next week, next Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. with another session of But We're Different Live, and we hope to see y'all there. Thanks, everyone.